Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you something completely new, completely different, and I hope you guys really like it. It's one build that I have to say I put a lot of myself in it, but not in the way it's built, but I've taken a lot of emphasis on creating this build to be a good build, and I'm actually playing it on live servers now. I actually made the character yesterday, started leveling him up. After playtesting it on the PTS, I can't help myself. It's something that to me is really personal, but at the same time it's really just something different in its design, in its play style, in its structure, and it works really good. And that's what I'm going to leave at. So let's go ahead and jump into it and take a look at the Dread Cleric. So the Dread Cleric, Argonian Necromancer, any race really can play it. I just found the Argonian to be and I don't want to say best option, but it felt like the right option for it because of the way it plays, the way it functions, just its overall playability. So let's go ahead and take a look at the build. We have 50 points in the Magicka, 14 in stamina. This is to give us a good balance between Magicka and stamina, but we're not really a stamina character. We're more of a Magicka character because we are a healer, but we're not the kind of healer you think. We're very selfish, and that's kind of the idea here, is not to play into the norm, to be different. And this one really shows. So you can see 30,000 max Magicka, 31k max health, 23k max stamina. We do have 1,097 mag recovery with 517 health recovery, 661 stam recovery. Our spell damage and weapon damage is coming in equally at 3273, 26% spell crit, weapon crit, and then we have 4k spell and physical penetration. Spell resistance 16k, physical resistance 15k, and you don't have to worry about having spell crit or anything like that because you got so much penetration with this build that you just tear through enemies when you're playing by yourself. And you're using a lot of mixed skills here, so you're using a mix of Magicka and stamina abilities, and it works really good. So really fun to play. Moving on, we are running the Thief Mundstone for the higher crit chance. You can run really whatever Mundstone you feel fits the build better. I think the Thief just works good. Primary stat food, so all stat food, so you know what it means. Taking a look at the food and the potions that I would suggest running. The Longfin Pasty and Melon Sauce, great all around, like hybrid type food. It gives you a good amount of every resource. And then if you're playing in trials or in dungeons, I would suggest the Bewitched Sugar Skulls, mainly because it's a tri-stat food, but it also gives you a lot of health recovery. And being an Argonian and being in a 5-piece heavy armor build, this health recovery is going to work out really well. Tripots, going to be the best option for this, with the spell power pots coming in second, because this does give you the major sorcery and major prophecy, so you get the extra spell damage and you get the increased spell crit. So if you're looking for a little bit more out of this build, you can use those potions. Alright, going to the gear now. Now this is where the build gets very selfish, but it's kind of the idea. The idea of the build is you don't serve any one master. You serve a darker, more vile entity that might not exist in lore, but in your imagination it can be a multitude of different things. It could be just death itself. It could be you do serve one of the dark princes of the Daedra. Or maybe you serve something that's even older than the Daedra themselves. Whatever it might be, it's up to you. So, taking a look at the monster set, first we are running Nearneths. Now Nearneths is an incredibly powerful set now. even better than it was before, and that's because the one piece and the two piece. The one piece adds weapon and spell damage. The two piece, when you deal direct damage, you have a 15% chance to summon a Lich Crystal that explodes after 2 seconds, dealing magic damage to all enemies in 4 meters. This effect can occur once every 3 seconds and scales up your higher weapon or spell damage. And that's why we have the high weapon and spell damage to begin with, is because of this set. Next up, we are running the Giuliana Set, and that's because it gives us max magicka in the set bonus, but the 2 and 3 piece give us crit, the 3 piece gives us the max magicka, and then the 5 piece gives us spell and weapon damage. And that's going to really play into our ability to heal and our ability to do damage, so the combination is really good for that. Alright. Moving on to the next set, and this is where things get a little bit more selfish, and if you want to change it out, you can change it out for other sets. Worm Cult's a really good one, or Worm's Remnant. It's a really good set to use with this. It gives your group a magic recovery bonus, or you can use other sets that are group orientated if you want to. I myself prefer this one, and that is the Withered Hand set. And I like the Withered Hand set with this build because, one, the 2 piece gives you mag recovery, the 3 piece max magicka, 4 piece max health, and then the 5 piece. When you are within 28 meters of an enemy you are in combat with, and the enemy dies, you heal for X amount of health and magicka. This effect can occur once every 3 seconds. Now, the reason why this build has so much health is we are in 5 pieces of heavy armor. Our shoulders, our legs, our shoulders, our gloves, our legs, our boots, and our chest are all heavy. Our helm is medium, and our belt is light. This is going to give us the overall highest resistance value in heavy armor, period. Our resistances actually go a lot higher because we are using a resistance buff on our character, but it's for the purpose of other things, and you'll see what I mean when we get to that. So, looking at traits and enchants, of course, just like a lot of my other builds, we have Invigorating on the helm and the legs. This is going to give you the better recovery with the build overall. The smaller pieces we're running Divines, and these are just to help with increasing your Mundustone effect, and then our chest piece is reinforced for the higher resistance value. In the bigger pieces, we are running Tri-Stat enchants. This is to give us a more broader range of resources, so we're not just running around with just magicka or stamina. We get a mix of both, and it allows us to use both magicka and stamina abilities, and it allows you to curate the play style depending on the situation. So if you want a build that's more stamina focused, you can do that. If you want a build that's more magicka focused, you can do that. And the way the build plays naturally is it's more magicka focused with a touch of stamina for purposes of dealing damage or even helping the group with heals and such. So, alright, moving on now to the jewelry. 2 Trirune rings, 1 spell damage, 1 with weapon damage. Both of these are really good for the build again because of the tri-stats, but the weapon and spell damage combination gives you that more balanced spell damage and weapon damage anyways. Moving on to the next thing, we are running a Necklace of the Withered Hand infused with mag recovery. You could use a tri-recovery here, but you're going to lose a lot in the magic recovery area, and you're going to get most of your stamina back through heavy attacks anyways, and you'll see what I mean by that when I show you the build in action. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Front bar, we are using a hammer, a maul. So it's a 2-handed maul infused with the prismatic enchant. This gives you the magic damage, and it restores health, magicka, and stamina whenever you deal damage every 3 seconds. So it's a nice way to kind of maintain your resources. It's not super effective, but it works out really well. And then on the back bar, we are running a Resto Staff of the Withered Hand with infused and a disease damage enchant. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, why are you doing disease? You're a healer. Like, remember when I said this build's very selfish? Because they play to their own power. They they only play in a group for their own gain. So it's kind of the theme. The disease damage is there though because one, it deals a good decent amount of damage, but it can also in PvP reduce enemies' healing received and health recovery, which can help out a lot in many ways. On top of that, in PvE, that disease damage is going to tick twice in your heavy attack. So it's actually really powerful. So it's a really good one to have. Alright, so now that we've seen the gear, let's talk about skills. Now, again, with skills, I would suggest unlocking all the skills you can. Get all the skills you can to access a more better build, a more fun build, something that's not so boring and dull, but something where you can kind of mix and match stuff to give you that greater functionality of a build. Alright, so taking a look at the skills we have on our bar, you guys just saw Venom Skull. This is a good skill for the build because you are kind of like a dark cleric, you know, you're a Dread Cleric, you use necromantic abilities to heal and harm. So this is one of the abilities, and basically you lob a skull, it does damage. It's just a nice way to deal some damage in your group. It's not something that's necessary, but it helps out in the long run when you see the build work. Next skill we have is called Ghostly Embrace. This is from the Bone Tyrant skill line. You summon 3 patches of skeletal claws from the ground in front of you. Enemies in the first area are snared for 30% for 7 seconds, immobilized in the second area, and stunned in the third area. And each of them has a different. So you have 7 seconds snare, so slow, 6 second immobilize, 5 second stun. And this can work in both PvE and PvP. I like it in PvE, especially in group play, when you have like a bunch of, you know, trash coming at you, like 5 enemies, you throw this out, it slows them down. But each patch applies minor maim for 7 seconds, reducing the damage done by 5%, which helps your group in mitigating damage and everything else. You're not going to keep this up 100% of the time because you're going to be casting other abilities. It's a nice ability for its purpose, though, to get that initial minor maim before the tank gets it, you know, gets in there and starts, you know, heroic slashing or deep slashing, whatever. But it really plays well with the build. Next ability we have is Brawler. Brawler's a great skill. It's an AoE damage skill. It hits all enemies in front of you, but it also gives you a damage shield that absorbs 5,000 damage for 6 seconds. And each enemy hit increases the shield strength by 50% up to a maximum of 300. So you can get a pretty decent shield out of this, about 15k if you get a really good amount of that 300%. All right. Next up, we have the next ability, which is Resistant Flesh. Now, this is a powerful heal. As you can see already, you sacrifice your own power to repair damaged flesh, healing an ally in front of you, or for 12k health. It goes higher, but applying minor defile to yourself for 4 seconds, reducing the healing received in your own health recovery by 8%. You grant the target spell and physical resistance equal to half the amount healed for 3 seconds. So you give whoever you heal 6k resistance. It's actually quite nice. And it's really good when you're solo playing. You get a really large amount of resistance. Alright. Next ability we have is Braided Tether. This is a great AoE heal. It's a great skill to have, especially on a Necromancer healer type. So siphon the last remnants of life from a corpse, healing for 21,000 health over 12 seconds to yourself, all allies around you, and allies between you and the corpse. And then it scales off your highest offensive stat. So this scales off with the setup your max magicka and spell damage, so it works really well, and your spell crit. But while slotted, your healing done is increased by 3%. And we're not going to be doing most of our healing from the front bar anyways. Our back bar is going to be our primary heal. but this is so to make this heal and this heal more powerful, so when you're on the front bar. Next ability we have, and you can swap this out with something else, but I really like this for this particular setup, but Onslaught is an amazing damage skill. One, you strike through the enemy, dealing 10,000 physical damage to them and all nearby enemies. This attack ignores the target's resistance and grants you physical and spell penetration for the duration, or for your direct damage attacks, equal to 100% of the amount ignored from the initial target for 5 seconds. So when you use this, it'll strip them of their resistances and give it to you as penetration. You're already using a hammer, so you're gonna get a really large amount of penetration against enemies, allowing you to just rip right through them. And this is where this build really shines with damage output, is using the Onslaught skill. Healing wise and damage, our next bar is a mix of healing and defense, I would say. So first up, we have Intensive Mender. This is a great healing skill, by the way. You conjure a ghostly spirit to do your bidding and stay by your side for 8 seconds. The spirit heals you or the lowest health ally around you every 2 seconds, restoring almost 9k health. So it's a really good, like, you don't have to cast heal. You just cast it and let it run its course. Next skill we have is the Enduring Undeath. Now this you're gonna cast right away, but then you're not gonna cast this right away. Sorry, you're gonna cast this when you have a soul to take from, because the way it works. So release residual fragments of fallen souls at your target location, healing you and your allies for 7,000 health. If it consumes a corpse on cast, to continue to heal you and your live allies for another 8,000 over 5 seconds, and you can consume up to 5 additional corpses on cast, with each corpse expending the duration of the heal over time by another 5 seconds. So for each soul consumed, it adds another 5 seconds to the duration of the heal over time. So the heal over time actually gets bigger. It doesn't expend it to where you get 8,000 health over 5 seconds. It doesn't make it where it's over 15 seconds or 20 or 30 seconds. It gives you a larger pool of health to pull from, so it's really nice for that. Next ability we have is Unnerving Boneyard. Now this is a great, fantastic skill for any Necromancer to use. One, you desecrate the crown at the location, dealing 11,000 frost damage over 10 seconds and applying major breach to enemies, reducing their physical spell resist by 6k. Consuming a corpse on cast deals 50% more damage, and an ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber synergy, dealing another 9,000 frost damage to the enemies in the area, and healing for the damage done. So they can use it as another form of a heal. Next up, we have the Agony Tone. Now this is a very powerful skill. Not a lot of people use it, but it is a very powerful skill. You summon an effigy of bone at your feet for 13 seconds. That grants minor protection to your allies, reducing damage taken by 5%. This is a 6-meter radius. After 2 seconds, the totem begins fearing nearby enemies for every 2 seconds, causing them to cower in place for 4 seconds. That is powerful, especially in dungeon runs and even in some trial runs. Allies can activate the Pure Agony synergy, causing the enemies to take 7,290 magic damage every 5 seconds and applying minor vulnerability to them, increasing their damage taken by 5%. This is a wonderful skill because of what it can do. 1, giving you minor protection, and then 2, they can activate the synergy, giving minor vulnerability. Alright, next ability we have is called Summoner's Armor. This one, you basically wrap yourself in bone, granting yourself major resolve, increasing physical and spell resist by 6k for 20 seconds. While active, reduce the cost of Blast Bones, Skeleton Mage, and Spirit Mender by 15%, and it creates a corpse when the effect completes. So you can have it up recast it to keep that 15%, and it will create a bone which you can use for your heal or for your boneyard, which is really good. And even on this one, like with combinations to other skills, you can actually take advantage of the skeleton this creates, the corpse on that, and then the corpse from this. So that's where your corpses are going to come from for casting your Enduring Death and your Tether. Really powerful skills. And if you're in a dungeon, you got other mobs to choose from. Last but not least, Renewing Animation. This one, you bring your allies back from the brink of death, resurrecting up to 3 allies at the target location, restoring 5,300 magic and stamina for each ally you attempt to resurrect. So, it's the only class in the game with an actual resurrect. It's very, very nice. Alright, so, now that you've seen that, I'm going to go over a few other skills that you can use, like when you're playing in Overland and you need a DPS, instead of summoning like the Mender, because you're really not going to need this in Overland. You're not going to need, sometimes you might not need your Enduring Undeath. It's nice to have though. So there are skills that you can swap out. Skeletal Archer is a really good skill. Blighted Blastbones is a really good skill. You can also use the Glacial Colossus for damage, or if you really want to really mess with people, the Mystic Siphon, great shock damage over 12 seconds, and then it also restores magicka over 12 seconds. It's not a lot, but it also increases your damage done by 3%. When you look at the Bone Tyrant, we have the Ruinous Scythe, we have the Ravenous Goliath, Necrotic Potency, which is a great one for PvP. Living Death, we also have the Expunge and Modify, another great skill for PvP. There's a lot of really good stuff here. When it comes to the two-handed skill line, we have Dizzying Swing, which is an awesome skill for PvE or PvP, and also the fact that it does more than just set them off balance and all this. It has a stun effect, it has a snare effect, really good overall skill. We have Stampede if you want some area of effect damage. You also have Reverse Slice and Rally as a kind of buff to weapon damage, and then also other things. Like I said, you can play this as a stamina DPS or a magicka. It's really up to you. Armor, heavy armor, Unstoppable Brute, probably the best like resistance buff you can get for this setup if you really want to use a stamina morph instead of a magicka one. Soul Magic, of course, Shatter Soul, great skill, and then Consuming Trap. If the enemy dies while they're infected with it or affected by this, they'll give you resources back. Moving on to the Fighters Guild, Dawnbreaker's Smiting, great skill. You also have the Ring of Preservation, which gives minor protection and a heal over time. Then you have Camouflage Hunter if you want that extra weapon crit. Mage's Guild, same thing. Inner Light, great skill. Gives you 5% increased max magic, 7 if you have the magicka controller, I think it is. Yeah, magicka controller. Then you can get the Inner Light to give you 7% extra max magicka along with the spell critical. Degeneration, great way to get major sorcery on a Necromancer. So, and it gives you a decent amount of damage over time, plus it gives you that major sorcery, increasing your spell damage. And this is primarily when you're like solo playing. Scalding Rune's not a bad damage skill, and Balance is great for tanking. Moving on to physical, or Psijic Order, sorry. Precognition, great for PvE or PvP. Time Freeze, another great skill. Crushing Weapon is great for the front bar if you want a spammable, a really good, powerful spammable, because you'll also get the Spell Orbs, which will deal physical damage as well on top of that. And the fact that it also applies Major Breach when you use it, 4 or 5 seconds, also can help you out with using a hammer in heavy armor. Channeled Acceleration, great way to get minor force, sorry. And then Min Spirit is a great heal for you to use if you want to use it on the front bar. It also gives resistance, the major resolve to your allies, so it's a really good buff for that. And Deep Thoughts is a great way to recover resources. Moving on to Undaunted, Overflowing Altar, really, really powerful thing. And you have the health to expend. You have 30k health, so you can use this, no problem. It does do the minor lifesteal, but it also applies blood fat, or has a better synergy, the blood fast synergy, which heals for 65% of the person's max health. Really, really good. You also have the Inner Beast for taunting. You have Spike Bone Shield if you want a shield for tanking. And then on top of that, you have the Mystic Orb for damage and resource giving to your allies. Moving on to Assault, we have Aggressive Horn, another great ability. And then Razor Caltrops, great way for major breach on a larger target area. And Echoing Vigor is a great heal to use for heal over time. Support-wise, we have Cleanse, which is a great way to remove negative effects on allies. It also, for each negative effect removed, the target is healed for 6% of their max health. And then you have Stalwart Guard, which is a great way to give people minor force, and while connected to them. It's just really nice. And 30% of the damage they take, you'll take. So it's kind of like you have the health to spare, and you have really good resistances, so the damage isn't going to be as much. Argonian, the reason I chose Argonian, one, Life Mender is a great passive Argonians get. They get the increased healing done by 6%. Next, they get the Argonian Resistance, which is 1,000 extra health, and then they get the Disease and Poison Resistance. And then next is Resourceful. Increases max magic and stamina by 1,000, and when you drink a potion, you restore 3125 health, magic, and stamina. It's basically like putting a synergy on a potion. So you get a lot of resources back. Crafting wise, alchemy, medicinal use, hands down one of the best passives you can get from the crafting line for like playing the game. Other than, for just crafting. And then Gourmand and Connoisseur, also really great. These add 20 minutes to your eating food sources. And the alchemy one basically reduces the cooldown on your potions, so they last less time, and you can activate them more often, or in better succession. So, and that's it for the skills. Now we're going to take a look at the CP system. And the CP that I would suggest using. Green's not going to change much with a lot of my builds, unless I make like a Thief build or I'm making a Dark Brotherhood build. But in this case, most of them will use Steed's Blessing, really good movement speed buff or bonus, getting the cost reduction in damage to armor so you can repair cheaper. The 10% chance for a potion to not be consumed, and then Rationer adds another 30 minutes to your food. Moving on to the blue, or the Warfare, we have Focus Mending. This increases healing done with single target heals by 10%. Because we're an Argonian, we get 6% healing done, and this adds to this. So this is a 16% healing done. And then when you look at the Swift Renewal, increases healing done with healing over time effects, 16% again. And then the same thing with this, healing done by area of effects, 16%. And then last but not least, Rejuvenator. Grants weapon and spell damage to your healing abilities per stage. So we get an extra 165 weapon and spell damage to our heals, which makes us more powerful with healing. Moving on to the red tree, we have Rejuvenation. This increases our health, magic, and stamina recovery. We have the Restore Stamina on kill, because our armor gives us magicka on kill. So we get both magic and stamina no matter what. Plus, we get the health as well. So, Peace of Mind increases your health and magic recovery while under the effects of crowd control immunity. So we get an extra 200 health and magic recovery, which is really good. And then last but not least, we have Spirit Mastery. Decreases the time it takes you to resurrect an ally by 33%. This is going to make your res times about as quick as a Templar nor baseline. So it's really good. So you're probably wondering, how does the build work? How does it look like when it works? So I'm going to show you basically the way I would play the build or whatever in a group or not in a group. So first thing, of course, keep my buff I would cast my Spirit Bender. I would keep my heavy attacks going with my staff. As you can see, you can watch. The top number up there is actually the number from the enchant. And the extra number is just extra damage I get to deal. So, really good. I try to keep my bone armor going as much as possible and my Spirit Mender while I'm playing in a group. I will drop the graveyard a lot. I will save my big burst AoE heal for later, and then if I need to, I can always use this as a dot heal, and then I have a burst heal that I can use on allies, which gives them the higher resistances. Now, the nice thing about this when you're solo playing is you actually end up with 22k physical and spell resist. It's really nice when you have all that stuff going on. It just makes you overall really, really tanky, but it also makes you really effective at your role in a dungeon. On the back bar, with being a Resto staff and the disease damage, you can use other Resto staff abilities, which is kind of nice, which I didn't go over. Resto staff has a lot of good skills for this. Combat Prayer can be a good burst heal for your group, and a great way to give them minor berserk and minor resolve, so it gives them a little bit extra resistance for 8 seconds, and it gives them that extra damage potential. You have Healing Ward, which is a very powerful shield with healing strength added to it. Siphon Spirit's a great way to apply minor lifesteal and minor magicka steal. Healing Springs, probably still one of the best heals you can get in the game, besides like rapid regeneration. Life Giver's not too bad. This one applies regeneration, blessing, and protection, and steadfast ward at no cost whenever you cast it on an ally, and it's a super cheap ultimate. It's really fast to get out. So any of the Resto staff skills you would want to use, you can use. I prefer the setup it has because it focuses more on its own skills than it does on the Resto staff. The Resto staff is primarily there because this right here is the best way you're going to get magicka back in heavy armor. You're going to get 30% back for the Resto staff and magicka, and because you're wearing heavy armor, you're getting another 25%. So you're actually getting almost 100 and something percent back in resources. Actually, you're not that much. Your baseline's 30, 60, 70 or 85% resources back when you heavy attack. So you can literally spam some skills at some points, because all it takes is one heavy attack and boom, you get a huge chunk of resources back, and you can keep this up almost indefinitely. And there is something wrong with the PTS. It keeps changing my stats all the time, so the stats might not be 100% accurate to what I told you, but it is pretty close. With the front bar though, and the hammer, like I was gonna say, you have the skull, which you can do as a light attack or an attack, and then you got the heavy attack. This is how you're gonna get most of your resources for stamina coming back in, is you'll be up on the front lines healing like this, and then when you need resources for magicka, you're gonna swap back to the back bar. If you're really hurting for resources, you can always pop a potion, which is going to give you 1214 mag recovery with an 852 stam recovery, which isn't too bad. But the 1242 and the fact that you get a big burst of resources back makes it a lot easier to keep skills active with the Resto staff. A lot easier to keep resources coming in. And with the Resto staff, you can also heal at ranged and still deal damage at ranged if need be, without using the hammer. So really good, like I said, overall skill use. It's got a lot of really good stuff. And if you don't want to use the hammer as a primary weapon, lightning staff is a great option, so is ice staff. But I prefer the hammer myself because it just plays into the playstyle I like. So yeah, but that's pretty much it for the Dread Cleric, guys. I hope you guys like the build. Like I said, it's got a lot of personal connection to me. I do in D&D have a character that I've been I put together to play in a new campaign that's going to be coming up, that a group of people are doing on Roll20, and it's a group I play with, and I talked to the DM about it, and he's going to let me do it. But I'm making a Lizard Man Death Cleric, so it's going to be quite interesting to play. And I that's how I came up with this. Was I thought, how would I put a Death Cleric into ESO, and that's how I came up with it. And the people I play with over there on Roll20 are actually started playing D&D, or not D&D, started playing Elder Scrolls recently on console. Most of them play on the Xbox, but they're playing on console, and they're playing because of D&D and the group Critical Role that did the Blackwood chapter stuff. They thought it was really cool the way that campaign played out, and they thought it would be really cool to see what the game was really like. And some of them really liked the game, but they wanted more D&D feel. And I told them, I said, I do videos like that where I make D&D type characters for ESO, and they're like, oh really? Like, that's cool, I want to see some of them. And they really like some of my stuff, so I'm this is kind of a shout out to them, and everything. So yeah, but that's pretty much it for the build, guys. I hope you guys like it. If you do, you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. If you do subscribe, I do suggest you click that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.